One. Hey everybody, it's your friend Adam, artist, author, filmmaker. I'm here with you. Your name is Art Thibert. Thibert. How do I? You call yourself RT Bear though? Is that a nickname?
No, Thibert is how you say the last name. It's
Oh,
French.
for a long
Yeah.
time I thought your name was Art T Bear. Like your middle initial was T. I thought, oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Like when I was doing a lot of work with Marvel and DC, their offices are in New York City, and so they all have like the New York accents. So they're like Archie Bear, Archie Bear. I was like, no, it's not Archie Bear.
I gotta tell you, I was glued to your drama stream about your breakup with what it was Marvel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was completely riveting. I was actually a friend of mine had asked me to do some background in a movie that he was shooting, so I was on the movie set, sitting around with nothing to do, and that popped up, and I was like, "Oh, this is good. This will be juicy."
It only took me 15 years to share that story. Yeah.
Yeah, I had heard you talk about it on other live streams, so. And then you there was an article written about it, which I did that help or hurt your campaign? It seemed like at least it got some eyes on your campaign.
I don't know because those things become like they end up having their own momentum. So, you go on a lot of shows, you do a lot of interviews. So there was a lot of things happening at the same time. So I don't really know if that was the main reason, but the campaign did heat up. But there was a lot of, going on Ethan's program and doing different interviews and things like that. So it didn't hurt.
Yeah, I put a link to the Indiegogo campaign in the description below if you want to check it out. And James Hayes, who's just a great guy who always jumps in the chat and tries to share people's projects, is in the chat with links as well, so you guys can check it out. I know that you were in the chat yesterday when I was talking to Kelsey, and we were talking about movies and TV and stuff like that. And I mean, I'm not really a comics book guy, so I mean, I don't really know your work. I did a Google search, and man, tons of stuff comes up. And obviously, you worked for Marvel. Did you work for DC or just for Marvel?
I actually started work for Marvel and DC at the same time on the exact same day. So
Really?
I started working as an inker at Marvel and started working as a penciler at DC Comics, and I got to work on the same day. Yeah.
Wow. And they don't mind that. I mean, I thought your breakup from Marvel had to do with them fighting them thinking someone at DC was trying to steal you away, or you were trying to steal talent away, which obviously was fake news. But so they don't mind if you work for both Marvel and DC at the same time.
Well, this was 35 years ago when I broke in, almost 36 now. So the rules were a lot different. So a lot of freelancers bounced back and forth between the companies, and they did freelance work. There was no money in comics even then, and so a lot of people did advertisement work. They did storyboards. If you lived in LA, you did storyboards. You worked in the animation field. It used to be seasonal, so you did animation. And then when the animation dried up, you did comic books. So basically, if you were an artist in this type of, with this kind of mindset, you did whatever you could to pay the rent. So Marvel and DC weren't as territorial. They understood that they didn't pay very well, and so that you had to make money however you could. It wasn't until after Image Comics that Marvel and DC mostly Marvel became very territorial. DC would offer you exclusives, so they would pay you for exclusivity, but Marvel at that time really wasn't. But I guess they expected some kind of loyalty, even though they weren't paying for it. And I found that out, I guess, the hard way.
So there, but you're obviously making a name for yourself as a comic book artist. That's a huge part of it, right? I mean, am I wrong there?
Yeah, I mean, the books I've worked on, sold millions of copies. I was there during the heyday when Marvel, when those books started selling millions of copies, the X-Men books, Todd McFarlane on Spider-Man, Jim Lee, Will Spartaccio, Rob Liefeld, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson, we were all working on books that were selling millions of copies. And then when we couldn't get a good royalty split and Marvel wouldn't acknowledge that somehow we were contributing to these books and helping the sales on these books,
Yeah.
In form of maybe, we get a higher percentage rate on royalties or a page rate increase or something, they wouldn't acknowledge it at all. So their argument was always, it's the characters, it's not the artist, it's not the talent that sells the book, it's the characters, it's the IP. But how do you explain that they weren't selling that amount before we got on these books? It wasn't like Marvel did anything different. The only thing that was different in the equation was us. And so that led to the Image Comics revolution.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's talk a bit about that. But I want to cover this first because that's kind of why I brought it up. It's interesting that you're building a name for yourself, and in most professions, and Hollywood completely became the center of this. Is once the talent realized they had leverage over the studios, then all of a sudden it was the big stars that would get a movie made instead of the studios, and the studios kind of lost all of their power, almost to the point where, I don't even know if Marvel Studios, like the movie studios, even has studios. In Los Angeles, you have real movie studios everywhere with backlots and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how Marvel Studios works, but so you're building a name for yourself, but it's not turning into leverage against the companies that you're working for.
Right. They're not even acknowledging it. Like I said, it almost becomes an ideological battle where they say it's the IPs, it's the Spider-Man, X-Men that are selling. But, how do you explain that they weren't doing these numbers before we started working on these books? And then ultimately, when we did leave and formed Image, those numbers came over as well. So we were selling just as well as we were over at Marvel. So, Forbes does an article on it, Marvel stock drops, all these things. So I think the proof was that we were making a difference on these books. But I think to this day, they still don't acknowledge it, and they won't, I think that philosophy goes over into the film as well. I think that's why you see Marvel bullying some of the lesser, I guess, named actors when they wanted to, change their contracts. Like who was the guy that played Rhodey in the first Iron Man? Like he wanted to renegotiate his contract, and they were like, nope, And I think the only reason Robert Downey Jr. was able to is because they realized that if he left, they would have nothing, So, I think the film, it has the same philosophy as the comics. It's the IPs that sell, not the actors or the talent.
So you were there at the beginning of Image?
Yeah.
You want to give some background there?
Well, it was a lot like Comicsgate is now. There was a lot of tension, a lot of misunderstandings. We were kind of punk rock. I think what is it, Carl? Is it Carl?
Yeah, Carl O'Rowe.
Yeah, that he says is punk rock. So yeah, we were kind of punk rock, and we didn't like the treatment. We knew that there was more, and we decided to leave. And we didn't know what was going to happen. So we were taking a big risk, but we had faith in the product. We had faith in ourselves. And so we did it. And there was a big ripple. Like I said, Forbes wrote an article on it. Marvel stock went down. So I realized a lot of the tension when I had to go back to Marvel after Image kind of started to scale back a little bit. So I had to go back to Marvel. And so then I realized how much we had hurt them, because they welcomed me back, but not with open arms. And there were definitely conditions. So they put me through the ringer. And I think I inked every horrible and drew every horrible book that Marvel had for probably the first 6 to 8 months at Marvel until Adam Kubert, no, it was Andy Kubert, asked me to come onto X-Men, which was the book that I left. I was doing that book when I left. So it was kind of irony, and it was a big break for me coming back. And I thank you, Andy, for having me come back, because he was the one that sold them, on me inking him and working with him. So then I started moving up the chain again and started being treated better and respected again. But man, it was hell.
So are you doing any mainstream work now, or are you just doing your own projects?
I'm doing my own projects right now. Hanging out with you guys at Comicsgate and publishing. So I have Black and White that is in fulfillment right now. That was it was originally a 48-page graphic novel. It grew since then, but that is in complete fulfillment. It's printed up. It looks gorgeous. And right now I'm in demand with Chrono Mechanics. So that's my second book through Indiegogo, and that's going right now, and it's doing really, really well. We just went up a couple backers this morning, so that's always a good thing. It's always good to wake up to that.
Yeah, I think I looked at it. It was about you're pushing $29,000 now, which is great. 407 backers.
Yeah, and at 30K, we will unlock the next stretch goal, which is 6 new additional pages. So one of the things that's cool about these Indiegogo campaigns is we can build the books with the supporters. So if we can keep generating, backers, then we can keep the numbers going up. And with the stretch goals, you can go, well, we'll add more pages, we'll put enhancements, we'll do special covers, we'll do all these things. So it's pretty neat where, the people that support the book, the backers, are kind of like investors, like investing into a movie. So they're like producers, and they're financing these books and making these dreams come true. So I think this is a lot like film, to be honest.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love about it, because you really get to share in the creation of something, where the old model is really, some people are going to sit around and decide what they think you want, and then you either want it or not. But this is, you're kind of generating what the people want as they tell you what they want. And they even get to contribute to being a part of seeing it get made, like actually printed and shipped out and stuff. So I think it's fascinating. So Black and White, was that a property that you developed elsewhere, and then it reverted back to you and you developed it, or is it something that you've had?
Yeah, I originally did it in the Image heyday. So we released 3 issues. It was a 3-issue miniseries in 1994, and we sold, I think, 1.5 million copies. The whole miniseries complete, the 3 issues. Yeah. So
wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, those were the good days. Yeah, so it pretty much laid down the foundation for financial independence here at the Thibert homestead. So I'm very thankful for that, along with the Marvel days and stuff like that. But yeah, those were really good. And independently speaking, these Comicsgate books and what we're doing right now reminds me a lot of that. The numbers aren't quite as good, but they are building, and the attention is growing. So I think we're on the ground floor of something really, really special.
Well, we're facing a huge headwind in that the mainstream comic book industry is really out there creating a false narrative about us that discourages people from joining, when really it's just, I look at it and I think this is independent comics. People are upset about the fact that so much of the mainstream comic books are filled with essentially political propaganda that, they don't want to be preached to. They want to be told a compelling story without all the politics.
Yes.
So, but the thing is, on the progressive side, and I mean, I know this from my reading of moral psychology, that they really see they see anyone that goes against their political narrative as endorsing racism, which is just not the case at all. Like, I don't see any racism in Comicsgate. I wouldn't be a member of a community that I thought was racist. So
Yeah,
it's
and it's a completely false narrative, and the way I explain it is these are scenarios that they've created. These are arguments that they created that if you argue with it, then you just basically are saying that it's true. So
perpetuated.
yeah, case in point, like when it's usually a female argument, when you're arguing with your lady and they say, "This is how I feel." Anything you say after that, you're automatically a dick, right? You're an asshole because you're arguing now with feelings, and feelings aren't tangible and they're not logical. So anything you say is, you know what I mean? You're automatically a jerk. So you have to figure out how to walk around that on eggshells. So it's a great way to win an argument. So if you can shut somebody up, even though they're using logic and complete facts, and you can say, well, you're racist, then either you have to argue with that and say, no, I'm not. And then the more you argue against it, it's usually like, I have black friends.
Yeah,
that's
I know.
your argument. I have black friends. And then they're like, you sound even more racist now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you can't win that argument.
Right. It becomes a real hard argument to win because you're not dealing with facts and logic. You're just dealing with a false narrative. It's kind of like, this is how I feel. Well, how do you argue with how you feel? You can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best thing that we can do is just be out there and do our thing and just show people over time what it is. I mean, I've encountered that so much in just doing YouTube and things like that because, I mean, people are introduced in a way that is completely antithetical to the actual person that I end up talking to, that I often think, it's to the point where I don't even really establish any sort of idea about a person until I talk to them and get to know them myself, which I think more and more people, and we might even be at a turning point now with, like Dave Chappelle and Ricky Gervais, these comedians coming out against this super wokeness. We might be at a turning point where people are starting to realize, okay, I just can't trust this out of the gate. This person's a bad person without looking into it myself. So,
yeah, the PC culture, the PC police, and we always kind of swing, in these directions every once in a while. So I think we swung into this incredible PC type environment, and now the pendulum is swinging back to some sense of normalcy. And I'm sure at some point it will swing back. I think the biggest difference that I find this time out, where I'm older. I mean, you look a lot younger than I am, but I've seen this kind of thing before. The biggest difference this time out is that they're out to destroy you. Like they're not happy with just having their point of view and then putting it out there and then maybe battling in some kind of fair way. They actually want blood. They want to get you fired or they want you hurt in some form. And that's the biggest difference right now. That it is scary when with like Vic, they want blood. They don't just want him fired. They want it to go deeper than that. And that's not normal. That's insane. That's taking things too far. And that's the difference I see. How about you?
Yeah, well, I'm a bit more cynical than you. I actually think that it is normal. I think we struggle as a culture to avoid falling into that trap. And for some reason, social media has cropped up and we've kind of fallen into those old primal ways where, we burn the heretic at the stake. We're constantly looking for signs of witchcraft. And it's very bad for our culture. But like I said, I hope that we're kind of turning a corner here, that the pendulum has swung. And I think also people are starting to think of social media as kind of like the fast food equivalent of political debate, where, it's not healthy. It feels good in the short term. It tastes good. but it's not a sustainable path over the long term
Right.
for any kind of healthy outlook for individually or as a culture. So hopefully we'll get past that.
Well, it's really easy to take a shot at somebody when there's distance, when they can just type in words and there's this total detachment from that person as a human being. It's kind of like living in LA where, when, this dates me, but when people had guns and they were shooting each other on the freeway and being very hostile, and that kind of anger and that kind of hostility still exists. But I believe it exists because there's a detachment. You're in this vehicle and you feel like you can't be touched. So sometimes you do things that you wouldn't normally do. If you were face to face with that human being, you wouldn't be acting this way towards them. And I think the screen and the internet allows us this kind of detachment from that other person, and we're able to see them as something less than human. And we can act out and we can treat them in horrible, horrible ways because there's no backlash or very little backlash.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I block a lot of people on Twitter because of that. Like I try to figure out, is this person interested in having an honest dialogue, or they just want to snipe at me from afar? And so many
Right.
times I invite these anti-Comicsgate people on a live stream and I say, listen, if you have a beef with me, or if you think my values don't align with yours, let's talk. Let's have a live stream. Let's hammer things out. And I mean, I've had so many good live streams with people who are on the opposite side of the political spectrum. I'm sort of centrist, but in this day and age, it's so funny. I was watching a video before we started where they're lumping in like far right people with centrists. I'm going, what's going on? It's so much of that us and them. It's like, if you're not a liberal, you're one of them.
Yeah.
So
But then you realize this is just like East West Coast stuff. Like there's a whole middle America and there's a whole country there that most of them don't even know this stuff or care. You know
oh
what I mean?
yeah.
Most people are moderate and they're somewhere in the middle. I always thought of myself as kind of just a moderate. I'm somewhere in the middle. Um, and and so I also think like if you are, then you can be fair too, because if you're too aligned one way or the other, then where's your flexibility, where's the fairness? Because if you're so locked into one belief, then you can get into trouble that way, and then somebody can say, well, you're not fair, and then you're not fair because you only have that one, you know what I mean, that one point of view,
Yeah.
that
So
one party that you back or that one group that you're associated with.
yeah. So switching gears on the black and white, I'm curious. I haven't read Black and White, so but you sold 1.5 million copies. So is Black and White the celebrity, or are you the celebrity? Are people Black and White fans, or are they Art Thibert fans?
I think it's a little of both. Yeah, there's a lot of people that got back to me and said, I remember the book, from the 90s and was a fan, so I'm going to try this one out and see where it goes. So there's black and white fans, and then there's RT Bear fans as well. So I wish we could do more of like these analytics, right, where we could find out who is in this group, who is in that group, what's the demographics, all that stuff, kind of like what Hollywood or people that have a lot of money can do. So we can kind of tailor and advertise more in certain directions.
We
But
are kind of doing that. I mean, we are a bit over time. We're kind of figuring it out. I mean, there's all this drama around like the Mike S. Miller defection, and we're kind of figuring out, whose audience and their motivations for buying and that kind of thing. So
yeah,
I am always curious, and I mean, it seems like, I mean, if you sold 1.5 million copies, that's theoretically 1.5 million fans out there that it's just a matter of getting in touch with. I know that Doug TenNaples' campaign for Earthworm Jim was very successful because Earthworm Jim was a very hot property, and it's just a matter of getting the word out to Earthworm Jim fans, who like in this day and age, the internet is really a good way to capture that fan base.
yes, it's an amazing way to do that. And what we're doing here is this is an advertising campaign that we could never afford. Like just talking to you right now, Adam, and you talking about Chrono and Black and White, and then going on EVS, or people coming on my channel and me being able to promote them. This is like, we could never afford an advertising budget like this. But since that's the coolest aspect to this, that we are voluntarily inviting people onto our channel, talking up people's projects and getting the word out. And this is practically unheard of. This kind of what do you call that, where everybody's kind of moving in the same direction and they all have each other's back. And there's really, that's why I kind of don't understand the Mike S. Miller thing, is because it's all moving in the same direction. As long as you just keep going with it, it can build and it can grow. But as soon as you kind of deviate from that path, like it is a pretty extreme experiment that he's conducting, right? I'm trying to put it in nice terms. Like you said, like you're finding out, well, who is in this camp, who is in that camp, who are really Mike S. Miller fans, who are Christian fans, who are Indiegogo fans, who are just comic book fans, and who are Comicsgate fans. You know what I mean? Like there's all these different things that are happening. And so personally, I don't care for it. I do think that it's in a short term, it's hurting. And I think it's hurting people like myself's business. Like, I don't think it's going to hurt people that had bigger platforms.
No,
I don't think
not
it's
at all.
hurt their business.
Yeah,
but
I
it's
agree.
going to hurt people like my business than it did with Chrono. Even at a worst case scenario, when we came into it, we did a little bit under that. And so I was really surprised, but there was a lot of things that were happening. There were people that weren't fulfilling, and then there was the big divide. And so I think there were a lot of fans that were like, well, what do I do? Do I stay with Mike because I like Mike, or do I stay with Ethan and all these other guys? Like, what do I do? And if I buy Mike's book, then is that an FU to Cyberfrog? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they just didn't know. And then the worst aspect that comes out of that is just apathy, right? Where they don't buy anything.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. And this is the problem of the Mike Miller type defection. Because of that, it forces people to take sides. And I mean, I don't have a campaign up right now, so I'm at more of a liberty to dive into it. But I do, when you said, Mike is taking, like, playing with fire, I don't know that he realizes how much he's playing with fire that way, because people, I think, will instinctively just go. I mean, people are tribal by nature. It goes back to what we were talking about just the old instincts coming back up again.
Yeah.
So the hesitation to not back a book because you don't necessarily know what other people are going to think of that is going to drive him down to zero, there's no reason why that has to be.
Well, just to be really, really honest and upfront, I would like to go on Mike Miller live streams, but I don't know what kind of shitstorm is going to come out of it.
Yeah.
So, it's just not a good place to be. I still look at Mike as a friend. I have no reason not to, but he definitely is throwing, as the kids say, throwing shade in our direction. And he has said some things that just aren't really good for business. And I'll just throw this out if Mike's listening or anybody, is that when you say Comicsgate is a cult, or when you make these claims, you're also saying that about me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not saying it about an individual that you have a problem with. You're saying, you're making this blanketed statement. And so if we're friends, then you're also saying that I joined a cult, and that's very insulting.
Yeah.
Insulting to me, because I didn't join a cult. This is not a cult. This is just a bunch of people that agreed that this is a great way to market and sell our books. And that's pretty much it. We have a shared ideology. We have a shared belief. But I'm sure if you put us all to the test, there's a lot of things that we would disagree on. You know what I mean?
Oh,
We're not all
definitely.
in lockstep.
Yeah. Why are we putting ourselves to the test? I thought the whole idea behind this was to stop those political tests in comics.
Exactly.
It's kind of antithetical to our whole message, our whole the whole goal of Comicsgate. I'm
Yeah, I
curious.
almost feel like, oh, go ahead.
No,
I'm
you
sorry.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I almost feel like I'm back to square one. Like I said, I would like to go on Drawn and Quartered. I'd like to do some of these things, but I just don't really know what's going to happen. So, it is kind of going back to square one because, coming over to, CG, I came from mainstream. So I already knew how most people in the mainstream felt about it. So I already knew that I potentially was going to burn some bridges there.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a ton of support from a lot of those people I worked with. They will not openly support me.
Yeah. Well,
at least
you have their support privately, which has to feel like somewhat of an achievement, because I know a lot of people are not afraid to burn you publicly, which is the worst.
There have been people that have done that. But by and large, the relationships and the friendships that I forged for 35 years that I still have those relationships. Even though openly, if I put a post up, they're not going to, you know what I mean? They're not going to go, way to go, Art, like they used to. They're not going to openly support me in that way. So, and I know that they're all watching us and they're taking notes. And a lot of them are probably waiting till things stabilize a little bit. And I think that the only way that's going to happen is a longevity and success.
Yeah.
If we can sustain this for a couple more years and the success keeps going or builds, then it's going to be undeniable, right? The industry is going to have to say, this is a viable platform. I mean, it already is. Yeah. But I mean, it's going to be undeniable at that point.
The new players are going to come into, I kind of think of this as Comicsgate 3.0, where new players are going to come in, and the players that may have put out books that weren't satisfying, whether it be the writing or the artwork, those people are not going to have a sustainable model. Like, you've been doing this long enough, and the artwork in the book is amazing. I haven't read it, so I can't comment on the storytelling, but like, I'm sure, like, you've been on enough of these books, I'm sure you can tell a competent story. So you're going to be like, you're going to be able to continue to build your business over however long you stick with it. I mean, even like comparably, I mean, I 30 grand is nothing to sneeze at for a book. And I'm curious, I mean, Ethan's been pretty open about his the page rates and whatnot. I mean, that's got to be more successful than doing a page gig. I mean, you're basically paying yourself to do a book.
Right. It depends on what the overhead is. Your print run, and a lot of that money that's in that total is in shipping. So that's one thing that people don't take in consideration, is that total that you see on the page. That's with the shipping, but that's not your money. That doesn't, that goes back into shipping, and it's kind of a crapshoot with shipping because, especially when you're shipping overseas, you don't really know what it's going to cost you. So you kind of pad it a little bit, but more often than not, it ends up becoming more money. And so that comes off the profit or your back end. And so those are impossible to figure into the campaign. So I would say if you did a campaign and you sold 800 to 1,000 units, you can probably sustain. You could sustain an existence and do very well. So if you have 800 to 1,000 backers that follow you and that will support your projects, I think you could make a go of it, and you could do very well.
Yeah.
Also depends on where you live.
you're at about 400 backers now. Do you think you'll make it to the 1,000 backers? This is your second campaign, right?
Yeah. And I think that we launched it late in the year, which is not the optimal time to launch. We were starting fulfillment on black and white, but everybody hadn't got their books yet. And then the drama that came up, I think it was kind of like a trifecta of like a perfect storm. that we got swept up into. And just ask Mitch Brotweiser, man. That guy took the brunt. He took a lot of crap as well. So the books that came out that time kind of got swept up into that. So that's
Wow.
why I think that that's the weird thing about what we all need to understand is that we are individuals, but we do reflect on each other. So if one of us doesn't fulfill and enough of us don't fulfill, then that reflects on everybody. You know what I mean? Because then the haters or whatever you want to call them, they have something to hold on to, right? And that's tangible. That's a tangible beef to have. And you can't argue with it. It's like, well, I backed, 10 books and only got 2 of them fulfilled. People don't, you know what I mean? How do you argue with that? You can't. So I think that we need to start fulfilling more quickly, and we need to stop bitching and throwing shade at each other, because even Image comic books took a long time to stabilize and to ship on time and to keep their promise, because there's so many hats to wear and there's so many different things going on that you can guesstimate when you think the book is going to come out, but it always ends up taking longer. And I made that mistake as well. And John Malin had the best advice ever, and I took his advice in Chrono. Is he said, whatever you think you can do, like your worst case scenario deadline that you can start fulfilling, pad that by 2 months, because it's always better to ship early than to ship late.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I did. And Chrono is looking like it's going to ship early at this point. So,
yeah, from business, under promise, over deliver. You'll never go wrong with.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's really good advice to have. And so if there's any up and comers that are entering into CG, and just take this advice, man. Don't disparage your brothers. Always have a good public face. Always promote, no matter who it is, no matter how you feel about it. Just don't discriminate, because I don't, and I don't think most people do. And whatever your promise is, make sure that you keep it, because that's going to help build a reputation and help promote each other. So that's my that's my advice.
Yeah, the bomb throwing definitely hurts a little guy. And I mean, I've talked to Mike. Like, Mike was one of the first guys that I talked to when I was researching Comicsgate, and I've always tried to give him an outside perspective. But he's one of these personalities that just is not gonna learn until he does it himself, which is really, I mean, you kind of got to just leave that alone. You got to let them figure it out on their own.
Yeah, it's like raising a kid, and there's certain types that you can go, well, you know what? If you stick that fork in that light socket, it's going to hurt you. And then there's some kids that'll go, okay, Dad, I won't do it.
Yeah.
But then there's that one kid.
Yeah, he's like, what'll happen?
Yeah, let's see what happens. And so there's always that person. And on some level, I admire that Mike swims against the stream. You know what I mean? Like, that he's his own person. He has his own way of looking at it, his own way of doing things. But then when it hurts the whole, when it hurts the collective, that's when I have a problem with it. Because if you want to crash and burn, you want to experiment, then go do that. And I think, case in point, where it became very obvious is when he did that Pride is a Sin. Mm-hmm. And that cashade on all of us. Ethan tried to get out in front of it. I thought Ethan did an incredibly great job, man. Hats off to you. Did you see that stream where Ethan was like kind of trying to get out in front of it? And I
didn't see it. I've heard about it after the fact. Yeah, and I've talked to Ethan. I did an interview with Ethan where he talked about it. So, I mean, that completely plays into the social justice narrative that they're trying to push. And I know exactly. It's funny.
You're giving it all to them.
Yeah.
Right? In that one moment, you're proving their case against you. And like, this is hurting my business. This is hurting all of our business. Don't do this, man. At some point, you are Mike S. Miller, an individual, but at some point you are kind of connected to this whole. So it's just like you're an individual, right? But you're also an American. You have this dual identity thing. So on one hand, you have to adhere to America's interests, and at the same time, you have to find how you can be an individual within those parameters. And it's no different here.
Well, even him pulling all of the Christian stuff, it seems quite obvious to me that you could easily pull out the judge not lest ye be judged. Like, why? Who are you to be judge, jury, and executioner of gay people, Mike? Like, seriously, it still doesn't stack up to the Christian values I was raised with, at least. So,
yeah. And it's up to God to judge in the end. So if it truly is a sin, then he'll make that distinction. But we're just mere human, mortals, and it's not really up to us to make those distinctions or those judgment calls. So they're still flesh and blood. They're still human. They're still our brothers and sisters. So, like
I noticed when they wrote the article up about you over the video that you made about leaving Marvel. Art made told, I guess the story itself was about an hour long. He told this story about him basically getting pushed out of Marvel Comics under kind of shady circumstances. They kind of made some stuff up about him, and the press, I guess it was Bleeding Cool, wrote an article about it, and the one of the things I saw people in the comments just zero in on was just the simple fact that you use the term SJW, which I think that triggered a lot of people.
Politically correct SJW, it's just a term, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of thin skins, and there's a lot of people out there that want to be hurt, and they want to lash out, and it's the victim mentality. When you placate the victimhood, you're empowering bad behavior. So if I can lash out or say that you hurt me, then I'm putting you at a disadvantage, right? So I'm saying your words hurt me. So then if you're a feeling human being, you go, well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. But then they use it as power, right, against you, because they got you to break. They got you to fess up, and now you're in a place, from their point of view, I don't think if you apologize, you're a weaker person. But to them, then you've shown a sign of weakness, and then they can go in and then they can exploit you. And that's the problem with this too, is that this isn't normal human behavior. It's a way to manipulate somebody, to control them, to empower yourself. So if you can say you're hurt all the time, then the people around you are walking on eggshells, and they constantly have to be in a place that they keep in mind all your feelings and your emotions, and they don't want to set you off. So they're walking on eggshells around you, and all you have to do is say, well, now this offends me, right?
Yeah.
And then you put me at a disadvantage, or now this offends me. Now I'm at a disadvantage again. So then you're always in a place of power, and it just placates your victimhood. But in the long run, it doesn't do you personally any good, because you can have somebody feel sorry for you all you want, but it doesn't gain you anything. It's short-term manipulation or gain, but it doesn't get you anywhere,
Yeah, we're doing a really strange thing in the culture that really bugs me a lot, because we are pressing these victimhood narratives, and it's the people that feel victimized that who are you pointing at?
I'm pointing at everybody.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, if you tell people, yeah, you're a victim, you've been victimized by the culture, you're basically giving them a free pass to do any terrible thing to other people and themselves, even, because they're the ones that are punching back. They're not necessarily, they don't perceive it as, something that some unprovoked act that they're doing, because they always point back and they say, well, the culture victimized me first. even though it really is, they are the ones provoking things. Like we're so much of the culture, so many of us, I think, are trying to de-escalate things, but it can't happen because they have this excuse that the cultures just arbitrarily victimize them for whatever reason. So even if we try to de-escalate the situation, they're still ready to dive in with both feet. And you can never kind of escape that original sin that they've kind of placed on you.
No, you can't. And the thing is, when I was young, there was sticks and stones.
Yeah,
They
me too.
break your bones, but words can never hurt you.
Yes.
So if somebody hits you, that hurts. You can't deny that. If I punch you, you can't deny that.
Yeah.
But if I call you whatever name in the book, you get to make a choice. You get to say, this hurts me or it doesn't hurt me. Like somebody says, oh, you're a Four Eyes. It's like, well, no shit, I wear glasses. You know what I mean? Like, why should that hurt me? You just pointed out a fact. Oh, you're short. Yeah, I'm short. Okay, let's move on. You know what I mean? Like, but if I went like, oh, how could you say that? You hurt my feelings, and then it doesn't get me anywhere, and it puts that person in either they're going to double down and they're going to punch my lights out, or they're going to feel bad and artificially apologize to me. They're not going to mean it. They're not going to mean I'm sorry. They just see that you're struggling or they want to get out of an uncomfortable situation quickly, right? So they just say, I'm sorry, so they can move on. So none of this is real. None of it's tangible. It doesn't even do the person that's doing it or conducting it, the manipulation, it doesn't do them any good. It doesn't really empower them in the long term, because the people that could be apologizing to you may not even give a shit. You know what I mean? They don't even care. They're just saying it to placate you so that they can get out of that uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, they are definitely tangibly trying to hurt you. So much of that part of the culture needs to change. And I guess we are kind of working on it in our own way. I've been on YouTube. I should actually look it up. I think it's since late 2015. So that's like 4 years now. And that's kind of the reason I got on YouTube, was to fight against this victimhood culture, this victimhood mentality. You and I were raised, they call it the dignity culture, the thick skin culture, the sticks and stones. It's got to be, I got to admit, though, I do have some empathy for kids growing up in the social media age, though, because when I went to school, you knew if people didn't like you, you knew who they were, but you didn't have access to the things that they were saying about you, which is just, oh God, that's got to feel horrible if you're 14 years old and everybody is like attacking you online. It's got to be that much worse.
Yeah, it's passive aggressive. Like how do you combat that? You really can't.
Yeah, we need to. Things are going to change. I'm certain of it. Skits comic for $1.99 says Skits movie premiering 1/10/20 at 8 p.m. Eastern. What is that? Tomorrow? Sweet.
I think so. Yeah.
You got a movie? Do you know anything about that? Skits comic. He did a movie.
Yeah, I had Skits on my show the other day, and he showed a little trailer of a video, and I think he's got a new one coming up.
Sweet.
So that's what it sounds like he's going to debut. So the comic book looks great too. He's putting that together with his wife, and I think she's in film as well.
Yes, Star Blades. I saw the Star Blades trailer video for his campaign. I thought, I'm going to do me one of these. This is awesome. Like, this completely kicks ass. I think it's Kyle Ritter, right? That's his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks amazing. If you know video effects and stuff like that, you're definitely at an advantage. Do you know stuff like that?
No, sadly not sadly, it worked out pretty well, but I worked with Von Klaus on the Chrono Mechanics video, because the video he put together for Monster MD was really, really good. And I tried doing it on my own and working with some people, and these people were really talented, but I was having a hard time trying to create the narrative. And so Vaughn is really good with storytelling and things. So I crafted it, filtered it through his sensibilities, rewrote it, did it, and then he kind of understood where things were going. So he could add little touches, just little storytelling touches that just made the video that much more better. And And that's definitely an advantage. And that's something I don't really know how to do.
Yeah.
The technical aspects of that. I know how to like storyboard and lay things out and storytell, but the actual technical aspects, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, Vaughn is great. The guy that I had on with Kelsey yesterday, Fresher Luke, that kid is an amazing animator, and he's kind of looking for a good place to build his own audience. Like we should definitely talk to that guy about. My idea is just you try to put favors out into the community. So when you launch your book, you've got some favors that you can call on. So he would be a great resource if you're looking to develop something animated, and I think that would be great for a campaign. Ethan's in the chat too. What's up, Ethan? Good to see you. So
Hey,
I also wanted to ask you, because I know you said when you left Marvel, it opened up opportunities in television. So I want to talk about that a bit, because me as a screenwriter, television writer, that kind of thing, I'm always fascinated about that end.
yeah, well, you live in LA, right?
Yeah, Southern
Yeah,
California.
so I always lived like I was either Orange County or South Bay. So I lived in like Hermosa, Manhattan, and
Yeah,
Redondo Beach.
I lived in Seal
So,
Beach for a while. So
oh, cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I lived in Huntington Beach as well in Orange
yeah.
County. Yeah, so
It
yeah, cool places to live.
is.
Um, and the film industry is like in the South Bay, they're just everywhere. And my roommate when I lived in Manhattan Beach, just a little aside, our apartment complex was right across the street from the McMartin preschool. Remember that whole molestation
Oh my
phenomenon? Talk
God.
about witch hunt and all that. Holy shit, man! All that stuff, that trial was going on when I lived there, and so he worked with Howard Chaykin. He was Howard Chaykin's writing partner. So they worked on American Flag together, which is a comic book, an indie project, and they did film together. So basically, my roommate was a screenwriter, and so I learned a lot from working or just being around him. And also, one of his best friends was Sam Hamm, which Sam Hamm wrote the first. I think he wrote. Well, he did write the first Batman, the Tim Burton movie, and then he took a pass at Batman 2, which I read that script. It was a lot better than the movie that Tim Burton did later. And then he also wrote a treatment for Terry Gilliam's Watchmen, which I got to read, which was phenomenal. And
Wow.
so I learned a lot. Yeah, so I learned a lot, and in just the storytelling aspects, they never left me. And so as I kept working in the industry, so that was probably 10 years into, me doing professional comic book work. So I started really getting into story and how you structure things and how you tell a story. And I had great mentors, you know what I mean? I had Howard Chaykin, and I had John, his name was John Moore. And so he also wrote the Flash TV series, John Moore did.
Wow.
And so the older one, not the CW one, but the I guess in the 90s or whenever it was, late 80s. And so it was probably 90s actually. And so, long story short, I always wanted to tell my own stories, but you're trying to make ends meet. You're working every month. You're trying to pay your rent, your mortgage, pay for your family, all those things. So I didn't really have the liberty to storytell. I didn't have the financial ability to do those things until Image Comics. So the money was really good. They could pad, money is time, right? So for freelancers, money is time. So if you make money, then, and if you have a little extra money, you can use that in form of time. So you can develop things. So what happened is I got the bug at Image Comics. And so I did black and white, and I did Chrono Mechanics originally through Image Comics. And so then I had to go back to work again, and that's present day, or 15 years ago, that story that I told where Marvel fired me. So then after that happened, I was so thoroughly disgusted with the comics industry, and we had just had our little daughter. She was like 4 or 5 years old when I got canned, And I really was looking at like I was going to retire at Marvel. You know what I mean? The backstory was I was gonna chain my ankle right to the board, and everything was going to be Marvel, Marvel, Marvel. So, and I mistakenly thought that the company would always be there for me if I showed loyalty. And just to back up, me going to DC, I've always done that through my whole career. So this was not an exception to the rule. I've always done this. And so even when I was working at Marvel, at that point, I was working at DC when they fired me. So anyway, it's a little bit of backstory. So what ends up happening is they do fire me. So I had some FU money saved. So I took 2 years off, and I just told myself I was going to develop IPs, and I was just going to draw for myself, and I was going to design and write and put things together. I didn't know if they were going to be comic books. I didn't know if they were going to be screenplays. I didn't know if they were going to be pitches for TV shows. I didn't know. I just had all these ideas, and I just wanted to put them out in any way I could. So Fox had this Pitcherama, and so it was for like cartoon shows, because what was it, Simpsons and
this was around 2005, right? So you have like Adult Swim, early, and that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. Adult Swim, all that stuff. And so I did that pitch, and I did it as a comic book. It was an 8-page comic book, and so I had my pitch, but I had a comic book that went along with it. I thought it would be fun to have, and this is before comic books in Hollywood. You know what I mean? That was
I know. Later. Before they got married.
Yeah, before they started having babies. And so, I did that, and I got a lot of support. Like nothing happened, but I got a lot of support. So then I put I was like, I'm going to do Chrono Mechanics as a comic book. So I put an ash can together, and I went to San Diego Comic-Con. And I also had partnered with a production company because I have friends that work in Hollywood as well. So they had a production company, and so they were kind of sponsoring these IPs. So we had a pretty big booth there and the whole 9 yards. We also had a tentative toy deal at the time for Chrono. So there was a lot of things that was set up, and we had maquettes, and we had a lot of like dog and pony stuff. And so a person from Kids WB came up, and her name's Megan Casey, and she's the wife of Joe Casey. And so she's like, what is this? Tell me about it. So I did, and she said, I love it. Come in and pitch it. And so the neat thing too is I can never say his name, but Matt Groening. The guy. This is when at San Diego you could just walk around and you saw people. It wasn't like it was a bunch of like people dressed in character suits, and it was wall-to-wall people. And so he came up and he looked at it. He goes, this is awesome. So like when you start getting people that are interested in what you're doing, it fuels your fire, because we work in a vacuum. Our studios, we just work in our own heads. And so any kind of accolades and any kind of feedback like that, if it's even this much positive, you run with it, man. You just fly. So I pitched it at Kids WB, and long story short, we got a development deal. But development deals don't mean a lot of crap.
I was gonna say. You and I know that. Some people might think that the development deals, oh my God, let me start counting my money. Let me go out to the Lamborghini dealership.
Well, you'll know this, okay? So just before I pitched it, you look into it. And also I got an agent at that San Diego Comic-Con. I'm with Circle of Confusion, so Dave Alpert, and they were just forming at the time.
I know so many of my friends who are actually afraid to talk to their agent because they're like, I'm afraid they're going to like leave me. I'm just, stay quiet. I still have an agent now. So
I fall into that camp.
Okay. So when you first get an agent, you're like, yes.
No. When I first had the agent and I had the IPs, I was always there. We were pitching and we were doing the thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Since there's been some time, what I do is I vicariously go through Bo Smith, who is also with Circle of Confusion.
Oh, okay.
So his agent is my agent. So I'm saying, hey, can you talk to him? How's things looking? So you always do you send the Christmas card. You try to.
Definitely. Yeah. Try to keep that relationship open. Yeah.
Yeah. So So anyway, the development deal, when I first got involved, we did the research, and my attorney is saying, yeah, at best you're probably gonna get $2,000 to develop this thing, and then you'll get development money.
Right.
So the more you do, the more hats you wear, you'll get paid for that. So if you do storyboards, or if you do character designs, or you write treatments or whatever, you'll get paid for those things. So then I was like, okay, let's try this out. And so what ended up happening was so funny is when I went, okay, so where's the development money? They're like, we don't pay development money anymore. And I was like, it was only like $2,000 you guys were saying I was gonna get. And it's like, we don't even do that anymore. So okay, but I'll still get paid for whatever I do. And they're like, yeah. So then, we started moving forward on that. And then this happens all the time too. Kids WB went away. They just dissolved, and they went into Cartoon Network. And so all the resources went all into Cartoon Network. And so all my contacts there kind of dried up. Although Megan did go over to Nickelodeon, so I did go and pitch some stuff over there as well. But basically, I did that for 2 years. So we put out one issue of Chrono through Image Comics, and then I would just develop, animation ideas, write screenplays, and do things like that, and then just pitch around. So that's what I did for 2 years. And then I needed to make money again, so I went back to comic books.
Yeah, I've been kicking around this whole time. My wife and I moved to Los Angeles in 2000. So yeah, but the 90s, there were all these $1 million spec screenplay sales, and that really brought people out of the woodwork. Like $1 million on a spec script, hell yeah, I'm writing for Hollywood. But a lot of people act as if those $1 million spec sales are still around, and they aren't. Like you said, like you can't even get money for a show that's in development. You can have huge stars attached, and they do this all the time. Like the first thing they do now, if you have a show that shows some promise, and a lot of people are getting those shows lined up, not even with scripts, with like sizzle reels. They'll do like a dynamite video that kind of lays out a trailer or a TV spot for the potential show. They'll get some producer interested, and the first thing the producer will want to do is attach a big name, like a huge star, because that's what moves the projects forward. But the writer, developer, they don't get anything until the show gets greenlit or picked up by a studio. But a lot of people are acting like options and spec screenplay sales are what they used to be, but they're not there. So
no, they're kind of a handshake deal, and it doesn't really mean anything. And in the short term, if it falls apart, you're left with maybe some money that you made for developing it, if they even let you. Like I think screenwriters even get more of the shaft, because at least in the animation, when I was talking, they respected me enough to give me like, oh well, you could write some episodes, you could draw some character designs and things, and you can make money that way, based on whatever you turn around. But the screenplays, man, they'll option it and give you absolutely nothing.
yeah,
And
ask you to do a rewrite.
They'll ask you to do a rewrite, and sometimes they won't pay you. And then most likely, if you're a novice if it's your first screenplay, if they do pick it up, they're going to have somebody rewrite it anyway. Like you're never going to be that guy.
They separated George Lucas from his IP in the same exact way, and I'm no George Lucas.
Yeah.
Like the first thing they want to do is get whatever they like, and they might buy something just based off of one scene that they like. So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, also one thing to think about, and I remember talking to J. Scott Campbell about when Danger Girl got optioned. And Danger Girl got optioned around the same time. I forget the company that was doing the Charlie's Angels, the Drew Barrymore Charlie's Angels stuff. Mm-hmm. And what these film companies do is they will buy a lot of IPs or option IPs, and they'll just bury them. They don't even have any intention on using them. They just don't. They want to eliminate the competition.
Yeah.
So anything that looks like a viable competitor, sometimes they'll just take that off the table, and they'll, he did get money. J. Scott Campbell did get money, but the thing is, your IP then just gets buried, and your chances of anything ever happening after that are probably next to none. Because usually, this is also what's so weird, is when you option these things, they're not just going to go, we're going to option this as a cartoon show or a film. They want all licensing rights. They want everything. So you end up selling everything or optioning everything, and sometimes, well, a lot of times, for absolutely no money at all. And so watch out for those things too.
Yeah, I one of the things that fascinates me about the Comicsgate phenomenon is that you guys should be focusing on developing a viable product that you can actually sell to people and make some money. I think some people, and I know this from being in Los Angeles, a lot of people who haven't made it, on a television show or doing screenplays, they think if they turn their screenplay into a comic book that it's going to help them in the movie market. But I don't think that's a viable outlook. I even talked to a friend of mine who's produced some stuff about the Comicsgate stuff, because we have people here who've done $1 million crowdfunding campaigns, and they're just ho-hum about it. I mean, even if you've made $1 million crowdfunding, they want to know, they're looking for something that has a built-in audience. Like you might even, you could hypothetically pitch Black and White as, there's a 1.5 million people out there that know of this, that if you put a commercial on television might have heard of it. So you have more options with that property than you do with a $1 million crowdfunding campaign that has, 5,000, 10,000 backers, whatever it is.
But just know this, when we did a Kickstarter for a Chrono campaign some years back, and it did get me meetings with Disney and I can't remember the guy's name, the production company. He was the producer on that Green Lantern film. I can't remember his name now, Paul something. But I think he's got offices on the Warner lot there. But sometimes these guys are looking at these crowd fund campaigns. I don't know about Indiegogo, but on Kickstarter they are. So they are kind of looking for viable IPs to buy into. And Scott Rosenberg, and I know that he's got a tentative reputation. He's the Men in Black guy and Cowboys versus Aliens. And I know that he backs a lot of Kickstarter projects and looks for option deals, because he did come to me with Chrono as well.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, so these things do happen, because, like, I think if Ethan is in a good place, and I don't mean to contradict you, but
no, Ethan's in a great place, definitely.
Yeah,
yes.
if you can become somewhat of a sensation, like he didn't sell 1 million books, but he made $1 million.
Well, and
that
he has
becomes a flip on their radar.
He has a history with Green Lantern as well, so he also has that, which he's a potential name on top of the fact that it's a successful campaign. I'm talking about the people who don't necessarily have Ethan's background that are looking to start a campaign. Like they're thinking, I'm going to have a campaign. It's going to be, I'm going to break the $100,000, the $200,000 mark, and people are going to be interested. I don't necessarily know that that's the case. I mean, I think you'll do better on a campaign if you focus on building an audience and making that audience happy, and kind of forgetting about the Hollywood money down the road. I don't know. Maybe it's bad advice, because maybe the potential of that Hollywood money really drives people. But sometimes I think it's like a lottery ticket, and people don't think of it that way.
Yeah, it is. Like I always say it's a pipe dream. Like it's never something that's on the forefront. I just want to create. You know what I mean? So I don't
Yes.
really have that kind of master plan. So when I'm doing comic books, I want to make the best comic book I can. My heart and soul and all my focus is in that. If I'm writing a screenplay, I do the same. I'm working with another writer, and we're adapting the first Chronos story as a novel, like a prose novel. So it's all the above. You know what I mean? Like I just want to. At this point in time, after 35 years invested in the industry as being a creative person, I just want to flex those muscles now. I just want to be creative in whatever capacity that is, but mainly in regards to storytelling,
Yeah.
passing a story, writing the story, that type of thing.
Is Chronos option now or is it open?
No, there are people that come. I think that it's so weird because the comics industry doesn't seem to embrace it as much as the film industry has,
Right.
especially animation. So I've made a lot of connections and inroads with animation and Hollywood with the book, almost more so than as the comic itself. But the comic book is where my love's at. You know what I mean? This is where I want to tell the stories. And this is also how I can manifest it. Like I have control over this. I can make this happen. I don't need a production company. I don't need $100 million. I don't need all that. All I need is some sweat equity invested, and to connect with some backers. People that want to be entertained in a way that's unique and different, and that's what Chrono Mechanics is.
Yeah, it's a little similar to my favorite movie of all time. It's a Terry Gilliam movie.
If you say Time Bandits, I'll agree.
It's Time Bandits. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's all the above, man. It's all those things, but with a because those guys, like, I got to ask you, okay, this is the question, because I think you brought up this in a chat. Okay, if it's like Time Bandits, because Chrono, these are working class, guys. These are repairmen basically. So it's the mundane and the super fantastic. So that's kind of Time Bandits. But what did those little midget dudes do? Like, were they repairmen? Like, what was their job description? Because I know it was a job description, right? They worked for the all powerful or whatever his name was.
Yeah, we never saw him working on one of those doors, did we? One of the like blue door or black door things that opened up. We never saw him repair one one single
Was
one.
that what they were though? Were they repairmen, or were they just kind of like guys that did his bidding? Like, I don't.
No, they were definitely they're in the script, and I've seen this movie probably 20 times, 30 times. I don't even know. Uh, the they were supposed to fix him. That's why they got the map. I mean, it's so funny. Terry Gilliam, I love that movie to death. Like the whole
I do
plot
too.
is basically just one line of dialogue where he talks about how, he gave him he gave him the map that it was a rush job to create the universe, and there's all these holes out there that we've got to fix. But they did
Yeah.
he does talk a bit in the end of the movie about how uh, the creator. No, I guess I was thinking that they made him because they gift him that tree, that stupid tree. They were like so bent out of shape about how like they'd done a good job on something or other, and then God gave them this horrible tree that stank. And
I guess the thing is that you never got to see them working. So
no,
maybe
not at
that's
all.
that's where I was thrown off there. But yeah, you're right. They were kind of like these working guys that were disgruntled, right? Because they didn't think that they were treated, with
Fairly, yeah.
respect and fairly by their employer. So they were like, screw this, man. We know where all these holes are.
We're international criminals.
Yeah. I know this is not PC, but my favorite thing is that one midget he's got the full size stogie in his hands.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And he gets
But
it.
he's got the smaller hands, so the stogie looks so freaking huge, and the way he's smoking it, it's so awesome, man.
He
I
gets it
love
in.
that movie.
He gets it in the
I
kid's hair. He like burns his hair. He's like, oh.
Yeah.
I love that
One of my
movie.
favorite things is, yeah, you know what? It's so funny that you mentioned this because I didn't realize that until you pointed it out, and then somebody else pointed out. A writer friend of mine, Judd Winnick, said, Chrono Mechanics is a lot like Hitchhiker's Guide. It's got like this really British sense of humor to it, and I was like, holy shit, I love that book.
Yeah.
But I hadn't read it since I was a kid. You know what I mean? And then like even like Time Bandits, until you said it, I always loved the movie, but until you said it, I was like, those guys aren't repairmen. And then you're like, no, they are repairmen.
They were kind of they were kind of working class, but you never got to see them repair anything, so you didn't know.
Yeah.
And they never mentioned like, why is it a bunch of little people? Like, are those the hiring policies? Are they angels or what? I kind of love Terry Gilliam's brazenness in not answering any of those questions. Just
those are my favorite types of stories.
Yeah,
where you leave the theater and you're like, not like what did I just see, but there's like these, like you get a full story, you get an entertaining story, but there's these little questions, but they're fun questions. You know what I mean? They're fun questions that like you and I are talking right now.
Yeah.
That you can endlessly talk about if you're, talking with somebody that's clever and reasonably intelligent.
That movie really affected me as a kid, and I think it's one of the movies that made me really want to like write movies and make movies and stuff like that, just because it was so fanciful. And also, I mean, it made me think so much. There was that game show at the end of the movie with the devil, like Your Money or Your Life, and they had the guy like hanging upside down, completely dark. I mean, it's like, is that guy dead or what? Yeah. And as a kid, I remember thinking, is that guy breathing? Like, what's going on here?
Weren't there, when they were in the cage too, the hanging cages, weren't there skeletons in the cage?
Yeah.
People that died in the cages. That's my favorite, where they tie the rope and they swing, and then the other guy swings, and oh my gosh, this stuff's so clever. Like, my favorite type of writing is just, I love clever. You like smart and clever. And that movie at first glance, it just looked like, it's silly. But man, that movie is really clever. I like it. Yeah.
At the end, the parents end up getting, spoiler alert, guys. If you haven't seen a movie that's like, what is it, like 40 years old? But the parents, they totally get it at the end, and you're going, what?
Yeah.
What just happened?
Dad,
I know.
Don't touch it. It's evil. And then it's in the
it's in the toaster. Yeah.
The toaster oven. Yeah. And it's like, boom, it blows up.
You're going.
And then you're like, he met Sean Connery, and for some reason, Sean Connery's a time traveler because he's a fireman now.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you get the sense that like, oh, he'll raise that kid. You know, that kid will be better off with Sean Connery. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I'd like to be raised by Sean Connery too. That'd be pretty damn cool, man.
That movie, I don't know if that movie could ever get made today, because it just flies, and there's so much strange stuff that goes on. But I mean, it does. I actually watched it recently, and I was amazed at how much of it has held up over the years, because I mean, even the devil is talking about, how he's going to change the world, and he's talking about technology and computers and lasers and all this stuff, and how that's how he's going to get us all. And I thought, that's exactly how he did get us all. It's so crazy.
Well, also good sci-fi, which there is like this underpinning of like, there's some sci-fi elements to it, with the technology.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I would consider it sci-fi.
Is like, that good sci-fi is a cautionary tale, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Most good sci-fi, you walk out of that with some kind of like Frankenstein, which is the originator of like, sci-fi. People think it's mostly horror, but it's horror sci-fi. And at its core, it really is sci-fi, because it's science running amok, right? It's science going crazy. So it's a cautionary tale. And then if you relate that to modern technology, it's like, should we clone or not? We're getting into this area now that we can clone things. We can clone body parts and stuff. So, Mary Shelley was way ahead of the curve on that one.
So would you consider Chronos Mechanics science fiction? I know that there's a science fiction element, but there's also kind of a working class element that doesn't really, I don't know if you'd classify it as sci-fi.
Yeah, it's like sci-fi action adventure. and with a lot of humor thrown in. So that's like the core ingredients. And the time travel, I purposefully didn't want to set too many restrictions on the time travel. It works a certain way, but what I wanted to do when I was pitching this, I blew executives' minds. Like what I also want to do is I want to be able to contradict those rules because I think it'd be funny. And since then, like Futurama and even like Rick and Morty has played with those ideas. 10 years, 15 years after I pitched it, in the day. So it can work. I have proof now. So, when I was pitching that to those guys, they were like, no, you have to have, stringent rules. We need to know how this time travel works. And I said, this is how it works. Whatever's the funniest idea, that's how we do it. They didn't like that.
That's kind of the rule with Futurama. I love Futurama, huge Futurama fan. Do you have favorite sci-fi movies or favorite movies in general?
Oh yeah, as you were talking about Terry Gilliam, like what is it, 12 Monkeys?
12 Monkeys, yeah.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah.
Like I watch stuff like even Lake House. Was that the movie with Keanu Reeves and
I never seen it.
They had the mailbox thing. Like I even watch like middle of the road and bad time travel stories because I watch them and I rewatch them and I like, did they deviate from their rules? Like, is this working? Is this not? And man, when I watch 13 or 12 Monkeys, I'm always like, it's perfect, man. Everything works. Like all the time travel rules, the way it all comes back around, it's perfect, man. You can watch that thing and try to find flaws, like from a critical writing standpoint. And I'm hard pressed to find anything wrong with that movie.
What's that independent one that the guy made? He made it 16 millimeter. And I think he shot about 79 minutes of footage and made a 78-minute movie. It was super big at in the film festivals, and it's an amazing movie. It's a time travel movie. They rent they rent like a storage unit, and they you haven't seen this movie? Let us know in the chat if you know what it is. But they rent a storage unit, and they figure out that they start traveling back in time and doing like stock trading. So they're amassing a bunch of money. Oh, I think it's Primer. Yeah, Primer. Mitch typed it just as I was thinking it. That movie's incredible, and it's even more incredible when you think of how they did it. And there was a time, like Sling Blade came out, and a lot of independent filmmakers thought, well, this is my opportunity. What was the other big one? Blair Witch Project. They thought, man, if I make a cheap movie, this could be my ticket. So
look at Joker. It wasn't an independent film, but it was
low budget.
By
But I'm just thinking the Primer guys. I mean, those guys are nobody. They're like making a movie. Yeah. He's making a movie in his mom's garage, and the next thing you know,
that movie 9. Remember that? It was 9, and it was like a student film, like a short, and then it was animated, and Tim Burton kind of liked it.
I think I know what you're talking about.
So they turned it into a feature, and it was pretty interesting.
The guy who did District 9 too got his deal lined up off making a short, and the short is pretty amazing. Kung Fury. I just looked up Kung Fury. You'll know Kung Fury from the viral video. I think I chopped in, it was like 38 million views. Totally amazing. The Kung Fury movie has Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, and it's supposed to be coming out this year, so that should be exciting. There's also that movie Moon. Have you seen the movie Moon?
No.
Oh, you have to check that out. That is the most mind-bending movie.
It's just called Moon?
It's called Moon, yes, with Sam Rockwell. Yeah,
I love Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, he's incredible. And this movie, oh God, you're at the end of the movie and you're thinking, it's one of those like drop jaw 2001 type endings. You're just like, says so much about our culture and stuff like that. I got thinking about the movies because of I was watching that stupid drama stream with Doug TenNapel just bad mouthing everyone. He was talking about how there's no good movies anymore, and I started thinking, what the hell are you talking about? There's so many amazing movies out there. So many people doing so much interesting stuff, and the internet is making it even more incredible because people can collaborate over long distances. We did a movie last year. We crowdfunded about 30 grand. I didn't do any of the crowdfunding. My producing partner did. We got our DP from Australia. The guy just wanted to do a movie so bad that we paid for his plane fare to come over and put him up in a hotel, and he shot our entire movie. He did an amazing job too. So
yeah.
It's
You know
incredible.
where you could make some money if you just wanted to and you were interested in certain things is documentaries. If you can on a relative shoestring budget, you can do some cool documentary work.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of channels that will pick those things up.
Yeah, if you've got contacts, maybe I will. I know a friend of mine has been hounding me to do a documentary with him forever. He actually he was working with another guy, and they did a short documentary that I think won an Academy Award. But I think him and the other guy had a falling out, so he's kind of like looking for another producing partner. Whether or not I want to work with someone that's had falling outs with people, I don't know. But he does bring an Academy Award to the table, which
that's a good thing.
I know, nothing to scoff at. Yeah, when you're sitting around at film festivals, it helps to be able to say, "Oh, by the way, we have an Academy Award for documentary filmmaking." So.
Yeah, I don't know any, but I was in a Kevin Burns documentary.
Really, for comics, for the Image stuff.
It was for Superman, and it was funded by Warner Brothers, and so there was a red carpet and everything. And this was about the time where, what is his name? It was the Superman Returns with Brandon Routh. It was that movie, and so there was a theatrical documentary that was released at the same time as the movie itself, and so I worked at DC during the death of Superman, and then when Lois and Clark got married. So I was interviewed for those segments there, and it was cool because I still had some of the artwork, so I still owned some of the artwork. So when I brought that into the studio, they were like, "Whoa!" And the funny thing is it Margot Kidder? She was Lois Lane, right?
Yeah, she went kind of nuts. I think she went crazy.
She couldn't even hold it back then because I think she followed me because they would, they just interview. So they had people in the green room and they just bring them out. And so Gail Simone was before me, the great Gail Simone. And then there was Margot Kidder that followed me. And yeah, you can just tell crazy.
Oh my God. Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. You just I've only spent a couple minutes with you, and I can already tell that you're crazy.
And there's two famous Hollywood insanity stories, and one of them is Margot Kidder, and the other one is I can't remember the name. It's killing me that I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was a movie with Harrison Ford, Blade Runner. The woman in Blade Runner that played the
what is her name?
Yeah, she ended up going insane. I think she tried to get a spot as Catwoman in one of the Batman movies, and ended up showing up at the director's house. And it was like a huge.
Well, wasn't she even in a relationship with Kevin Spacey? So if you're even in a relationship with Kevin Spacey, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, what is her name? Her name was Rachel in the movie. I can't remember her
name.
It's
funny that you remember her name. Don't bring it up. You might summons her, Art. we don't want
if you say her name 3 times.
Yeah, exactly.
On the live stream.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so somebody in the chat, please give me your name, and I'll say it 3 times and see what happens.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I don't want to cut you off, but I don't want to keep you too long either. We've been talking for about an hour and a half, so.
Yeah, if you have any last questions or whatever, I'm getting a little hungry here.
Me too.
Right? Yeah, it's dinner time for us.
What are you? Where are you at right now? Are you at liberty to say? Sometimes I don't.
I don't care. I mean, I'm a pretty public person. So I'm in
Yeah.
Corona, in the hills of Corona.
Okay, so you're in
So
Southern California too.
yeah, so Yorba Linda, Anaheim Hills, like that area.
Yeah, so we're in the same neck of the woods. Definitely, we're on the same time zone. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, watch Moon and Primer, and we'll do this again.
I wrote those down here. Yeah,
We'll talk
and
sci-fi movies.
I have some low budget, like not so much movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if how much I should say because I could be giving it away.
What do you mean? Like a TV show or something?
Like a live stream, like a live stream show.
Oh,
Like
really?
what do they call those? Like webisodes. Like to
Okay.
do a web show. Yeah. And very, very low production. I mean, zero production. I mean, the whole idea would to make it look like there's no production. Like it's just a matter of fact. It's like you and I right now, there's like a single camera on two characters.
Right.
And it's kind of like what inspired it. And then I don't want to give too much away.
Well, what are you planning on doing? Are you planning on like shooting it or?
I have scripts. I had an investor. I had a producer, but it all fell through. And especially in this PC climate, nobody wants to touch it. But it would be fun to pitch it and see what you thought.
Have you seen the short that I did? Because the short that I did is like total middle finger to like PC culture.
No, I have not.
It's called Social Justice Detective. I play a feminist Dirty Harry.
Wait, is that what you were talking with Kelsey, where you play the different characters?
Yeah, I play the different characters. Yeah.
Let me write this down so it's
it's on my channel. Social Justice Detective is what it's called, and yeah, it's definitely middle finger to PC. But it's funny because I mean I run a writers lab here in Southern California. I was actually gonna upload a clip, but I didn't get around to doing it today. And I kind of started the thing. I mean, I was doing the same thing as you, trying to hook stuff up. And I realized, I need to interface with more people. So I started this writer's lab just so I could get people who were in the industry, hang out with them and stuff.
Yeah.
You said you got a bunch of mentors working for Marvel and DC, which I'm sure, you end up collecting contacts that way. So
and also like with this show that I'm talking about, we also had 2 SAG actors, so you can even get, everybody just wants to work, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Just want to work, and so, I should see what you think of it.
Yeah, no, I'll read anything you want to send my way. Definitely, yeah.
I don't think you do it.
You don't think what are you asking? Are you asking me to act in it, or I don't know?
I'd produce it, man. I just want to make this thing happen.
Okay.
But see, if I give too much away, it'll give away the fun of it. So all I'll say is this: do you remember like the Ask a Ninja guy? Way back when, early YouTube.
Sure. Yeah.
And even I forget what her name was, but she was just like this teenage girl, and she had a camera just like we have set up, and she would just kind of do she would do a Dear Diary thing, right? And everybody thought like this was legit. And then it turns out that there was a small production company behind it and that she was an actress. And so maybe I'm a little Terry Gilliam where I like to mess with people's heads.
Yeah, no, I did too.
And I thought that was really, really fun. And these ideas you can only go so long before somebody figures it out, and then it's out there and people know. But you got to kind of keep it hush hush. And then, there was a radio guy that did the same thing. It was local LA, I think. What is his name? If I could remember his name, I know you would know him. But he was kind of a shock jock, and he would set it up where he would it was just kind of a talk like stuff we're doing right now. He'd have a topic, and then he would have people call in. But what he did is he would obviously choreograph the whole thing. He would have a subject, and then he would have actor friends call him, and then they would start up a bunch of shit, right?
The plants.
They just go like, what's that?
They're plants. The plants in the audience would call in, yeah.
And then what they would do is then the reality was so real, it was so tangible that it would suck normies in, right? And they would even like go, "How could you do this? Why would you say that? That's a human being," like that. And it would just keep going, and it lasted quite a while until somebody started figuring it out and kind of blowing the whistle on it. But I love that stuff. Like, I think it's so much fun.
YouTube culture is a little funny about that kind of stuff, though. Sometimes people get really upset. They feel like they've been lied to and manipulated, which I don't. I mean, I'm with you. If it's a show, I'm having fun. But
Yeah,
sometimes they're like, "What? This isn't real."
I feel betrayed.
I know exactly.
I was invested. But I think that's kind of the fun of it as well, is to, like, you have expectations and then you realize that you were so wrapped up in it and it's just nonsense, just like most of the Hollywood stuff, like, who cares about this actor or that actor? I don't care about their personal lives or who they vote for. I like a character that they played, and it could shift from movie to movie. Like, I could like that actor in this movie, but not like that actor in this other movie. So, I just like stuff where you can just mess with people's sensibilities, but in a fun way, not in a destructive, way, but just in kind of a fun way where you just kind of have your tongue in your cheek and you just kind of throw stuff out there. But like you said, I think this PC culture, or SJW, or whatever you want to call it, I think that there is a lot more thin skin. So you probably, and with the YouTube police, it might be harder and harder to get something like that going.
I know. It's so bad, because YouTube used to be the incubator for that kind of new stuff. And now it's just becoming completely corporate. And the corporate guys can press the buttons that we can't necessarily press. Like, Dave Chappelle can make these jokes, but someone on YouTube can't make the jokes. Like, you can see these jokes on Adult Swim. And I really feel like there kind of is a turning point happening on Adult Swim. I watch that show, Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. And man, they make SJW jokes all the time. Like, they're throwing shade at SJWs right and left. That other, we were in the shadow, or What We Do in the Shadows, the vampire one, they throw some shade at SJWs too. And okay. I think we're making progress when I see that happening. But then you jump on YouTube and you can't make the same exact jokes that they're making. It's like,
well, it's like, I've been on YouTube for just a year, a little over a year, and we could play trailers. Like, we could do trailer reviews, and you could pretty much play the trailer all the way through, and then you start getting dinged, the more you did it. And now I don't even think you can run the sound. Like, you can play like maybe a half a second, and then just do it in little increments. And then most people now don't do it at all. And my biggest problem with that is, like, why does this exist? This trailer is already up on YouTube. Why are you being so territorial with this trailer? They just don't want anybody saying anything negative about it. They're just controlling the product.
Yeah, that's true. I never really thought about that, but they have so much invested in. Movies cost so much to make, especially if they're going to get a theatrical release, that they're just protecting their territory. I would do mashups like 24/7. I'm a really good editor, and man, I would love to do those things because they're so much fun. But you can't get around the copyright stuff now. It's so bad, and unless there's the financial incentive to do it, like the idea that you're going to make a viral video, it doesn't make it worthwhile. It stifles so much creativity. So, unfortunately,
you can put a lot of time and energy into it, and then just have YouTube just decide that you can't air it.
Yeah. Social Justice Detective, I spent a month shooting, editing, and man, they suppressed it because I made so many of the, I don't even want to say it, the World War II bad guys. That word gets you demonetized instantly. And there's jokes in there. I'm making fun of them.
Yeah. They used to be hated by the world. Like, we were all in agreement at one point, weren't we?
But now you can't. Now they're the name that cannot be uttered.
Yeah.
So sad.
It's going to hurt somebody's feelings. Yeah. Okay.
Spartan Scotsman for $1.99. Thank you for the super chat. He says it was the Phil Hendry show.
That's it.
There you go.
Thank you, man. That guy. holy crap, man. And you know what was the best part about this, Adam? Sometimes he would call himself. He did voices. Yeah, so it was even better. Like he would actually just prank himself, and then everybody was like, "Yeah, okay."
That's totally my gig. I would love doing stuff like that. I love
Yeah.
doing crazy stuff, and it's so much nicer when it's all just all in good fun. So many people now get so serious about everything, and I just think, ah, where's the fainting couch for these people? Jesus Christ.
But isn't there a certain amount, even if you got duped, right? Even if you got duped when that, when that moment, that Wizard of Oz moment, and they pull the curtain back and you just see a guy with the levers, that's the great and powerful. Like, isn't there, like, there's a part of me that just goes, you got me.
Yeah,
like,
good job.
I actually like, good job, man. That was freaking awesome, man. You nailed it. And like, for somebody that's like sees a lot of the wires and sees a lot of the manipulation and stuff, like being, I guess, kind of cynical. And if you can pull the wool over my eyes, then congratulations, man.
I mean, there was that ancient show, Candid Camera, where they used to do that all the time. But I wonder now in our society if our if our highly offended society could even get away with that right now. They'd be like, you lied to them. It's like, come on, get over it. We're just having a good time here.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. But, like you said, I think things are sliding back to some sense of normalcy. And it would be nice to be able to, especially pitch to Hollywood or think about your IPs without having to filter it through some kind of, SJW blinders. You know what I mean? Like to be able to create unabashedly, like just to create and not have any of these boundaries, and then also to be able to go to the movies and see things that are slightly unexpected, things that aren't going to take a certain trajectory. That's the fun in going to film or reading a book or a comic book or any of these type of things.
Yeah.
And I think that just back to what we were talking about with Marvel, and controlling things, like when I got fired, they definitely didn't want another Image Comics uprising. They wanted to push down the talent, and they wanted to keep them under control. So then they set up a lot of restrictions in a lot of ways that then they could do that. And I believe that that's why a lot of these things, these creative ideas are being done on high, like they're being kind of mandated from the executives, the guys in the suits, the people that aren't really that creative, and they're setting goals and they're setting like a tone for their franchise or their comic books or their movies, but they're not in the trenches. And in the past, I can speak for the comic book world, it was left to the editor and the creative people. That was it. Like you called your editor, get this, Adam, you could call your editor and say, I have this idea, and they either say yes, let's run with it, or no. And you hear it right then. Usually they don't even really get back to you. You know what I mean? Like they'll just say, yeah, let's do it or not, because you had to make decisions quickly because it's a monthly schedule. So nobody messed around. You just went with the creative flow. You know what I mean? And if you struck out that month, that's just a month of it's just another story, right? Then you get it back the next month and you just keep building off of that. And then, like, I think film is the same way now, where you hear a lot of like, why does even a Kathleen Kennedy exist? Who is she to mandate like a tone for Star Wars? Why doesn't she just hire a director that she trusts and then have like, screenplays, and then have people that can, tell if it's good or not, and then just go with that person's, viewpoint? But why are these people making up policy? Why are these people making up, making creative decisions? They're just not creative people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. So, it's scary too, because it's like, that's propaganda right there. When it's coming from on high and not coming from organically from the creative people, it is very much a completely different goal than the goal of entertaining people. I read Bob Iger's autobiography, And man, Bob Iger's a big social justice guy, completely. Like he was super instrumental in the Black Panther movie and all that stuff. Not that Black Panther was a bad movie or anything like that. I mean, just getting representation into the Marvel universe and into movies was central to his thinking. And he even talks about how his dad was a big time progressive and completely politically oriented, but never really was had much success in politics or any of that stuff. So it's
Well,
fascinating
Bob
stuff.
Iger said, from what I hear, he's going to throw his hat in the ring for presidency. So if he can start kind of controlling the landscape now with this PC culture, SJW, ism or whatever, you want to call it, if he can start kind of reshaping the way people think in a fundamental way, then he could be, a mover and shaker. He could be that guy that is in the White House because
Yeah.
because this is not, these are not creative decisions that are being made. Like you said, these are agenda driven decisions that are under the guise of entertainment that we pay for. And this is what I always do when things don't make sense, which a lot of this SJW stuff didn't make sense for a long time, go woke, go broke, all that stuff, where there's plenty of templates that show that it doesn't work financially. But if you think about it in regards to somebody like Bob Iger, it makes perfect sense because he is creating a new paradigm. He is trying to reshape the way people think of stuff morally, and he's doing it with his films. He's shaping. Disney is a powerful entity, and if he can shape minds and he can get people to think in a certain way, then he could definitely be a political power. He already is kind of in a way. He's setting an agenda and carrying it through with his films and his mindset.
Yeah, I don't. They have an argument, and I've read everything I can on psychology and social psychology and moral psychology just because I'm fascinated by psychology. There is somewhat of an argument for representation. And I mean, I just like to figure things out. For the longest time, I was wondering, why are these people so upset about all these dead white guys on syllabuses and in college classrooms? Like, why do they care? It's centuries ago. Who cares? But I'm spacing on his name. Joseph Henrich. I read a book, The Secret of Our Success by Joseph Henrich, and he talks about how we look for models in our environment and that just unconsciously we can't help it. We look for models that are successful, that are our gender, slightly older than us, and the same race as us. And so if you're someone looking for a path to success, and all they're showing you is models of these old white guys, you're like, how do I know that that's going to be successful for me? And it's such a gamble for me to go down this path when maybe the color of my skin is going to lock me out of that success path. Then it's really a very primal thing. But I never hear the social justice side actually making that argument. And I think they've really overplayed their hands with the trans stuff, because they're making an argument now that kind of locks him out of making any of the logical science-based arguments like the one that I just made.
Right.
So they've kind of tied their hands, and I don't know where. I mean, the trans stuff really makes me nervous, and I often lay out. I mean, in our atmosphere, like if you have any kind of success or anything like that, I mean, you're really gambling just even talking about this stuff. But there is a certain amount of autistic people in the world, and they're saying like autism is going up because women are having pregnancies later and later and later, and there are a number of trans people in the world, and they've discovered now that they're getting a lot of false positives for this trans stuff with autistic girls. So I keep wondering to myself, how many autistic girls are we are we making think they're trans with this trans stuff to save how many trans people? And that's a simple calculation that you can make. Like if you're getting 1,000, if you're getting 1,000 people out of 1,000,000 that are a false positive with autism to help 5 people, like that's a calculation that we shouldn't be making, that I worry about. But I mean, how do you even have this conversation with people who are just, I mean, it's almost like an ideology now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's how they feel. It's a feeling, and I think fundamentally we all want to try to be as fair as
Yeah, we
possible.
want to help the most people we can.
Yeah, we want to think about the world as being as fair as we can, and then as like when you raise a child, they're so generous and they're hugging, but you got to teach them that too. But if you do your job right, they do all those things, and then society kind of starts grooming them that you can't be trusting, you can't be those things, you can't be fair. Fairness is an intangible. A fairness is something that we legislate, we make up, but it doesn't really exist naturally.
Yeah, that's the social
Fairness
construct stuff drives me bonkers.
yeah, it's more of like it's an ideal. It's something that, like, fairness really only exists in as an idea in the legal system. We have justice is blind and we have all those ideas, but somehow, like, we take those into our day to day and we just think that, oh, that's not fair. That's not fair. Well, yeah, it's not fair, but it's life. That's just the way things are. When you think about it, it just comes down to the biggest and the strongest in nature in general. So if somebody could club you and just take what you have, then where's the fairness? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if somebody can just do that, but we set up laws and we set up all these guidelines so that we can have a semblance of fair play, that you can be tried and by your peers and they can find you innocent or guilty. And so we set up all these things to be as fair as possible within the judicial system, but out in the world, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to shoot you and run, they could. If somebody wanted to burn your house down, they like there's nothing that you can do. There's no way you can guard these things. Where's that? But I think it's one of those things that I think that some people think that fairness exists on every level. Like, just your exchange with somebody needs to be fair or should be fair, and you can't, like, you have to kind of accept somebody as what they are and who they are, and then you identify it and move on. I taught my daughter, identify it and move on. That's what I tell her. Like, if that guy's a jerk, identify him as a jerk as quickly as you can, and then just move on.
Yeah.
Don't try to change them. Don't try to interact with them, because most likely you're not going to have any effect on them. So, identify a jackass and then move on, and try not to let it affect you, because that's just the way things are. There is no fairness, really. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, fairness is kind of a niche that we've carved out for ourselves with like legal systems and stuff like that. But yeah, no, there's no fairness in nature.
Yeah.
None at all. Even in social circles. I mean, people will, if they can cheat, they will. And if they can get away with it, I mean, we try to fight against it, but yeah, the asshole rule is, yeah, just get over it, move on as fast as possible is great advice. So we've had over 100 people watching almost the entire stream. So this has been a lot of fun. I don't want to keep you too much longer. You said you were hungry. I'm a little bit hungry too, but I was going to read, Erin Olson in the chat says, great show, Adam and T-Bear. Good night, chat. Good night to Tweaker too. Caffeinated Tweaker in the tweet is my collaborator on the book that I'm working on. So she's super cool. Be nice to her. But I'll you stay on, Art. I'll say a quick goodbye to you, but I'll let the chat go and I'll shut the stream down. Thanks everyone for watching and listening in. Let us know in the comments below what you thought. Is it okay if Art and I stage a fight on YouTube for some lulls? let us know, and we will see you all in the next video.
Yes.